You take the knob and you turn it until it sounds good with the rest of the song, and there you go. Tapping my fingers, waiting an eternity. This was our first attempt to capture something. Here's how we did it and what we learned. This is the start of a bigger project, not just an album, but a whole world we're creating. The songs came first, but everything else followed. The collages, the old tube amps, the late night demos, the stories behind the songs. It's all part of the same picture. Maybe it's not a hit record or a sold out tour, but it's real and it's ours. And if you found it, then maybe you're meant to be here too. Not many people know these songs yet, and that's okay. We're still building this thing from the ground up, and we're figuring it out in public. How to make the music we believe in, how to shape the world around it, and how to keep going even when nobody's asking for it. That's the part you don't always see, but that's part of the story too. So welcome to the journey, and thanks for joining us.
What inspired your first release?
I think with music, you just can't help it sometimes. Like you got it in you, and the music has to get out. And sometimes it takes a shape or a form in the form of a song or a band. And that's just how it comes together and how it happens.
And is this the end or just the beginning?
This is just the start. It's part of something bigger that is still to come. And there's a lot more songs and a lot more music that's going to come out.
Someone described your music as Sunday morning music with texture. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's cool that people associate certain songs with certain times of day. I've certainly felt that association. Some music is Friday night and you're getting amped up and you're ready to go. And some music is Sunday morning, and there's certain music that has some deeper resonance that I tried to listen to it on a Friday night, but it just didn't work because it was, Sunday morning music. And I sat down on the couch with a cup of coffee and just sip my coffee and listen to the record. And I was like, oh, now I'm ready to receive this music. I can't tell you how other people interpret our music, but I can just say with myself, it really depends on what kind of mood I'm in as to how I perceive music. Now, there's some stuff that I'll probably always like, but if I'm listening to something new and like my mind is flustered and busy and rushed, I'm going to have a hard time accepting and receiving the music. But say on a Sunday morning, I tend to have a little bit more free time. In fact, probably Sunday morning is probably the most free time I have any time in the week. So it is a little bit more of a relaxed atmosphere in which I can absorb new music or music that I haven't really given adequate time to digest. There's a sweetness in the air as we walk into the night.
Is all psychedelic rock this romantic?
I don't know if all psych rock is romantic. I guess a lot of it deals with lost innocence and realizing the world isn't the way that you thought it was, and people aren't who you thought that they were. And it's just learning to see the world in a new way. It's sort of that revelation that you get. And some psych music is dreamy and flowing. Other stuff, especially garage psych, gets a little bit more direct and psychological, and it has a message of like, hey, you broke my heart, so buzz off. I'm tougher than that. It's kind of a contradiction, but that's kind of what makes life and music and art interesting, isn't it? And I think a lot of psychedelic music is it is subjective because it lives somewhere in the solar system of your mind, and nobody else knows what your mind actually looks like. So it leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
What's your favorite part of making music? Recording or gigging?
I definitely prefer working in the studio. I just love creating sounds and then messing with them, running it through a reverb tank or a delay or even a overdrive pedal, and then just, turning knobs on the pedals and just outboard gear and seeing what happens instead of like looking at numbers on a grid and saying it needs, uh, 3 levels of reverb or whatever. You take the knob and you turn it until it sounds good with the rest of the song, and there you go. You found your sound, and you found a sound that only works with that song, but it has to fit like a glove. And sometimes you try things and it doesn't work, and a lot of times you try things and you just tweak it a little bit. Like you think ahead, like what would sound good, and then you try out the idea and hope that it works, and you can usually get it dialed in pretty good, or sometimes you just have to leave it be. But that's where the fun is for me. Like we can record a song, and then you can play, say, the vocals or another instrument back through these outboard effects, and then just create a really unique sound that you can't make on stage. Also, I rarely take this 1961 Guild guitar on stage because it's a fragile guitar and I'm afraid that something might happen to it on stage. But I do play this guitar on almost every song on the recordings that we have made up to this point. It sounds so good on recordings. I can't not use it. It's got to be in there. Man, I love this guitar, and just vintage instruments have a certain vibe to them. I guess they call it mojo or vintage mojo. It's kind of a cliche in the guitar world, but there's definitely something to these older guitars.
So, what was your DIY setup like?
We recorded the drums live without a click, mind you, at our practice space. Then we overdubbed the bass and the guitar in my garage. All the vocals, mixing, and mastering, all that was done at Raincat Studios. Our drummer followed a metronome app that was on my phone, and it's just this blinking light on 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think he put it somewhere in between the kick and the snare or something. We had some like funky little place. It might have even been on a stool or something like that. But yeah, it was definitely improvised. So it made the overdubs a little bit tricky, but we made it work. You just eventually would memorize which parts of the songs you got to kind of adapt to. And that's kind of how we play together when we're playing together in our practice room or on stage, but there was no visual cue on the recording. Like when we're in the same room together practicing, we can at least like look at each other, and that helps a lot too. At that point, we knew the songs so well that we could probably play them blindfolded. We mic'd up the drums with 3 or 4 mics. It was basically the Glenn John style of recording drums, which is a pretty simple setup. And we tracked everything live with a scratch guitar, scratch bass, and a scratch vocal. That way we'd have a frame of reference for all the tracks and kind of how they're kind of meshed and glued together and how all the parts would correlate. And if we messed up on guitar or bass, we just kept going. All that mattered at that point was getting a good drum take, and we would end up fixing the guitar or the bass later, as long as the drum take was good. Then we would rewind the recording and listen back to it all the way through. And if we thought we could do better, we would do another take. And I think we did all the drums in less than 5 takes per song. Some of them we probably did 2 takes at the least and 5 takes at the most. You can actually hear the scratch vocal bleeding into the drum tracks. It's kind of funny in hindsight. I mean, the only way you can really hear it is if you listen to the isolated drum tracks, and it's very faint, but it's there, and it adds to the magic of the moment.
What was your approach to guitar tones and overdubs?
Well, we did the bass with a DI and with a kick drum mic on a bass amp speaker cabinet. And we did all that in one afternoon. That was also in my garage before I moved. All the guitars were done with real amps. I think I had a DI, but I didn't use it most of the time. There's something magical about vintage tube amps. And I have a mix of modern guitars and vintage guitars. Most of my vintage guitars are budget student guitars because that's about all I can swing these days, you know. I don't have any vintage Fenders or Gibsons or anything like that. The only DI guitar part that we ended up using was on the jam at the end of the early days of summer.
What's the story behind the slide guitar part?
Well, I'm not really a slide guitar player by any means. It's just something I've dabbled in from time to time because I think it can sound cool when it's not overused. But I use this metal adapter that goes and raises the strings on this guitar that makes it easier to play slide. And that's what you hear on the recording. I used this Harmony, well, it says Airline, but it was built by Harmony. It's called a Stratotone. This guitar was made in 1963, and it has a great little vintage vibe. It's not the easiest guitar to play, but it sounds fantastic. And these little things are called Hershey bar pickups. That's the shiny little pickups here. And I had to put some tape on here, some painter's tape, because the high E string would get stuck underneath the screws that hold the pickups in place. But yeah, I used that adapter, that metal adapter thing, to raise the string so I could play slide on this. And then later on, I got a real lap steel, like a 50s or I think it's a 50s Silvertone lap steel. But that's not on any of the recordings because I got that thing after we'd finished tracking all the guitar parts. And then I ended up giving that lap steel to a friend. So if we need any lap steel guitar parts on future recordings, I'm going to call my friend. Man, I could play that all day. It's just 4 chords, but it's so fun. Some of the chords don't even really fit together, and I think that's what I enjoy about it.